You can tell how empty a train is by what you can hear. On the 1140, I can hear the wheels think. That soft clack underneath everything, working something out, mile after mile. Nobody talks on the last train. Nobody pretends to. That's the part I like. The doors hissed shut behind me before I'd even found my balance. They always do. I had my coat half off one shoulder and a smell of fryer oil still living in my hair. And the car rocked once, hard, like it was glad to be moving. Third car from the back. Same as always. She was already there by the window the way she always was. What was different tonight was the book. I almost didn't clock it. Then I did. And something in my stomach folded over on itself, pale gray cover, water stain on the corner shaped like a country nobody's named. I knew that book. I'd carried it from one apartment to another in a box-marked kitchen, for reasons I still can't explain. Claire left it behind when she left, and there it was, 90 feet from where I dropped it in a donation bin 2 summers ago, open in a stranger's lap on a train going nowhere I'd remember. I sat down 4 rows back, diagonal. I didn't look at it again. I looked at it the whole ride. Let me back up a little, because I'm getting ahead of the part that matters. My name's Marcus. I'm 34. I run a restaurant, says place near the river that does 80 covers on a good night and 110 on a bad one, which is its own kind of joke if you've ever worked in food. I'm the guy who's there when the doors open and the guy who locks them. I count the drawer. I sign for the deliveries. Nobody else trusts I am by any honest measure, very good at being needed and very bad at being known. The platform clock is 40 seconds fast. I checked it once against my phone 3 winters ago, standing under it with my breath going up in a cloud. And it's been 40 seconds fast every night since. I never told anyone. I don't think the transit people know. I built my whole night around that wrong number. If the clock says 11:40, I've got, in real time, 40 seconds before the doors. I've never missed it, not once. There's a comfort in trusting something that's lying to you, as long as it lies the same amount every time. People want to know why the last train. They ask it like it's strange. It's the least strange thing about me. Here's what the last train is. It's the only place where being tired doesn't cost me anything. At work, I'm a face. A good night, a smile that means the kitchen's not on fire. At home, there's no one to perform for sure, but there's also nobody, which has its own weight. A quiet you have to keep your shoulders up against. On the 11:40, I can let the whole thing down. Nobody on board is going to need a thing from me. I can sit with my coat half off and a stupid book 90 feet away, breaking something open in my chest, and not one person will ask if I'm okay. That's the gift. I engineered it on purpose. Work, last train, sleep, a loop with no leaks in it. I sealed it myself, and I was proud of the seal. 2 years ago, a relationship ended. I want to say that plainly because every time I dress it up, it sounds like less than it was. Her name was Claire. She didn't slam any doors. That's the thing people never understand about how it actually goes. There was no fire. There was a slow leak, the kind you don't find until the whole ceiling's soft. She'd say she was fine, and she meant it, mostly. And I'd take that the way you take a green light, and I'd be gone before 11 and back after midnight, and somewhere in there the air just went out of it. She didn't leave angry. She left tired. I remember that more than anything she said. The tiredness in her voice when she finally told me, like she'd been carrying a bag I never once offered to take. I never saw it coming. I tell people that, and they think I mean I was blindsided. I mean something worse. I mean I was never home long enough to see anything. You can't be ambushed in a room you're never in. So, the train. The quiet car at that hour has its own smell. Cold metal and brake dust. A little electrical, like a basement that's been kept very clean. The seat I take has a tear in the vinyl that someone patched with gray tape, and the tape is exactly the temperature of nothing, and I put my hand on it sometimes the way you'd touch a railing. The window fogs from the bottom up. There's a chime when we pull out of each stop. 2 notes, the lower one first, every single time. I could hum it for you right now, and I haven't been on a train in weeks. And there was her. I'm going to tell you about her the only way I'm allowed to, which is by what she did. Because honestly, I couldn't pick her out of a crowd by her face. I could pick her out by 100 other things. She read actual books. Paperbacks, the swollen kind that have been dropped in a bath at least once in their life. Never a phone. A car where I'm pretty sure the rest of us would scroll through a house fire. She had paper, and she dog-eared the pages. Folded the corners down with her thumb, casual as anything, which I'll admit horrified me a little. The small private violence of it. This person just bending a book to her will and moving on. I'd watch her do it and feel something I didn't have a word for. Not judgment, exactly. Closer. To envy, if I'm honest about it. There was a thermos, too. Green, the kind of green that used to be brighter, with a dent in the side near the bottom like it had been dropped down a flight of stairs and forgiven. Green tea, I decided, though I had no way of knowing and never asked. She'd unscrew the cap, pour a little into the lid, drink it in 2 sips, screw it back. Same ritual every night, somewhere around the second stop. She never looked up. Not at me, not at anyone in that car. I want to be clear that this wasn't a rudeness. It was a kind of completeness, like she'd brought everything she needed, and the rest of us were just weather she was riding through. There was one night that told me more than all the others put together. We stopped at the 3rd station, and an old man got on. Slow on his feet, one of those canes with 4 little legs, a plastic bag from a pharmacy hanging off his wrist. The car wasn't full, but the seats near the doors were taken, and he stood there swaying with the start of the train, gripping the pole with a hand that didn't want to grip anything anymore. She stood up. No announcement. She didn't catch anybody's eye to make sure they saw her being good. She just rose, picked up her book and her thermos in one hand, touched the man's elbow with the other so lightly he startled, and tipped her head at the empty seat. He took it. She didn't wait for thanks. She moved up to the rail by the door and stood the rest of the way, book and rail in the same hand, reading standing up like the floor wasn't moving under her at all. She got off 2 stops before me, the way she always did. I sat there the rest of the ride thinking about how a person does a thing like that, gives a seat away with no audience, on a train where the only witness is some tired man 4 rows back pretending to read the ads. I told myself I wasn't watching her. I want that on the record. Every night I told myself the same clean lie. I was just a guy on a train who happened to sit where the window was. I wasn't watching her. I was watching her. The conductor knew, the way conductors always seem to. His name was Walter, and he had to be near 70, with a white mustache gone yellow at one corner, and hands that shook a little, except when they were doing the one thing they'd done forever. He punched the tickets by hand, a little silver clipper, ka-chunk, a confetti of paper. They put machines in years back, the kind that beep when you tap a card, and they bolted one to a post at the head of the car, and Walter walked right past it like it was somebody else's coat. He didn't have to do it the old way. He did it anyway, coming down the car with that slow railroad sway, ka-chunk, like a clock that walked. I think it was the only part of the job that still belonged to him. He clipped mine one night and looked at me a half-second longer than a ticket needs. 31 years on this line, he said. Not really to me, more to the window behind my head. You can ride the same line 30 years and never once look up. Ka-chunk, he moved on down the car before I could decide whether that was about him or about me. I decided it was about me. I usually decide things are about me. It's a flaw I'm working on, slowly, on a train where there's nothing else to do. But I caught myself glancing 4 rows up after he said it, just for a second, at the back of a head bent over a paperback. Then I looked at my own hands, old habit. Look at anything but the thing you want. I don't know what I thought was going to happen. Nothing, probably. I think I'd made a kind of peace with nothing. Nothing is restful. Nothing doesn't leave tired. And then one ordinary Tuesday I dropped a glove. That's the whole inciting event, if you want to call it grand, a glove. I had them stuffed in my coat pocket, the cheap leather ones that had gone soft and shapeless from a year of being shoved into things, and getting off at stop with my mind already 3 blocks ahead at my cold apartment. One of them must have slipped out. I didn't feel it. You don't feel the small losses. That's how they get you. I made it through the turnstile and up the stairs, and halfway into the night air before my hand went into my pocket out of habit and found only one. I stood there a second doing that pointless thing where you pat yourself down as if a glove might be hiding in your ribs. Gone. And then was 3 stops down the line, carrying my left glove toward a city I'd never see the far end of. I went back. I don't know why. It was a $4 glove, and I had a long day pressing down on my eyes, but I turned around and went back down those stairs to the platform, telling myself I'd just check the bench, the gap by the wall, the places a thing falls, cold coming up off the tracks, the board overhead clicking its little letters around, the platform empty, the way it gets between trains, that hollow underground hush that has its own kind of sound. And the headlights came around the bend. It wasn't due. I knew the schedule the way I knew the wrong clock, and nothing was due for a long while on that platform. But here came a train sliding in with its brakes, letting go that long iron sigh, and the doors opened, and it was the 11:40, my 11:40, somehow doubled back, or held or thrown off its rhythm by something up the line I'd never understand. The signals do that some nights. They hold a train between stations for no reason a passenger ever gets told. She was in the doorway. Not the window, the doorway. 1 foot on the train and 1 foot reaching down toward the platform that was not by any count I had of her stop. She'd come 3 stops back the wrong way, and she was holding out my glove. Warm. I could see it was warm somehow. The soft worn shape of it filled out a little, like she'd been holding it the whole way instead of just carrying it. "You'll want this," she said. That was all. 4 words. I took it from her hand and our fingers didn't touch quite, and I felt the heat of it come off the leather into my cold palm, and every clever thing I have ever said to a full restaurant left me at once. "Thanks," I said, less than she gave me. I always give less. The chime sounded then, 2 notes, the lower one first. The doors started to close between us, that slow, certain way they do, and she stepped back up into the light of the car and I stepped back into the dark of the platform, and the last thing I saw before the glass cut her off was that she'd already opened her book again, thumb hovering at the corner of a page. Then she was gone, sliding north into the tunnel, and I was alone on a platform that had no business holding a train at that hour, holding a glove that was still warm from a stranger's hand. I stood there a long time after the sound of it faded. Here's what I couldn't put down. I didn't know. She got off 3 stops the wrong way. Or she didn't. Maybe she was getting off there anyway. Some errand, some friend, some life she had that I'd never had the right to imagine. Maybe the warmth in the glove meant nothing, just the heat that comes from anything held a while. Or maybe she'd watch me leave, 4 rows up and 1 diagonal back, every single night the way I'd watched her. And tonight she'd seen the glove hit the floor and picked it up and carried it backward through the dark to a platform that wasn't hers. I had no way to know which. There was no way to know which. And I wanted to know which more than I've wanted anything in 2 years. The loop had a leak in it now. 1 small warm tear in the seal I'd built so carefully, and I could feel the night getting in through it, the whole rest of my life pressing at that one soft place. I walked home holding the glove the wrong way around, not putting it on, and I didn't sleep, and the not knowing sat on the edge of the bed with me until the windows went gray. Because the next night, I'd get on the 1140 again, 3rd car from the back, and she'd either look up, or she wouldn't, and I genuinely could not tell you which one scared me more. She looked up. The next night, 3rd car from the back, and she lifted her eyes off the page when I came through the door, and held them on me for the length of one breath and went back to her book. That was it. That was the whole thing. I'd lost a night of sleep over a coin flip, and the coin had landed on its edge. I sat 4 rows back, diagonal, same as always, and I spent the next 40 minutes building sentences in my head and demolishing every one of them before it reached my mouth. You want to hear what a 34-year-old man rehearses on a train? Thank you for the glove. No. Too much weight on a glove. Cold tonight. No, that's what you say to a stranger in an elevator before you both pray for the doors. I run 80 covers a night. I can talk a table of strangers through a wine list I half believe in, can talk a line cooked down off a drop pan. And I sat there mute, 4 rows from a woman with a dented thermos, defeated before I'd opened my mouth. So I said nothing. For 3 more nights I said nothing. But the loop wasn't sealed anymore, and a thing started happening in the quiet of it that neither of us named. I boarded first one night ahead of her, and without deciding to, I left the window seat open. I took the aisle. I put my coat on the seat beside me and then took it back off, and folded it on my lap so the window seat read as empty, as available as held. She got on at her usual door and walked up and sat in it like it had her name on it. Didn't look at me, didn't say a word, opened her book again. 2 nights later, she boarded first, and when I came through the door, the window seat in her row was open, her bag pulled into her lap, her body angled toward the glass to make room that nobody had asked her to make. I sat in it. Still no words. To share a seat with someone night after night and trade nothing but the small architecture of where a body goes. Her elbow and mine an inch apart on the armrest, both of us pretending the armrest was a border with guards on it. The smell of her tea, the soft fold of her thumb bending a page down, that small private violence, 6 inches from my shoulder now instead of 4 rows off. I could have reached out and stopped her hand. I thought about it the way you think about touching a wet paint sign. I read my own book and didn't take in a single sentence of it, 3 nights running. Then the train stopped where it had no business stopping. It was a Thursday, I think. Late, even for late. We'd pulled out of the stop before mine and got when the whole car lurched, gentle but final, like a held breath, and we just stood there in the tunnel. The wheels stopped thinking. You don't realize how much sound a train makes until it makes none. Then the lights dropped to half. The bright ones cut out and left only the dim emergency strip glowing along the ceiling, the color of a streetlight seen through a curtain, and the whole car went soft and brown and close. A voice came over the speaker, scratchy, far away. Signal problem up the line. We'd be held a short while. Apologies for the delay. The voice clicked off and left us in it. The car had emptied at the last stop. I hadn't clocked it until the lights went down. Just the 2 of us now in a tin box stopped under the city. the dark pressing on the windows, the heat ticking somewhere below the floor. That's when the thermos went over. The train must have settled, some small shift in the rails, and the thermos slid off the lip of the seat where she'd set it and hit the floor and rolled cap loose, a thin, dark stream of tea following it down the aisle. She made a sound, half a word, and we both moved at once. I got the thermos, she got the cap. Our hands met around the same 6 inches of floor in the half-dark, and this time they did touch, briefly, cold knuckle against cold knuckle, and we both pulled back like the floor was hot. "Sorry," she said, "it does that." "It's fine." "It's not, it's all over your shoe." "It's a work shoe, it's seen worse than tea." She huffed a small breath through her nose that might have been a laugh. I handed her the thermos. She screwed the cap back on with both hands and set it on her lap this time, wedged against her stomach, the way you hold something you've just nearly lost. And then there was nothing to do. No window to look out of, just black tunnel wall sliding past at 0 miles an hour. No station coming. No book, the light gone too dim for it, and we both knew it and neither of us reached. Just the dim brown car and the heat ticking, and the two of us facing forward into a dark that had nothing in it. So we talked, because there was nowhere else to put it. "You always read paper," I said. "It came out before I could demolish it, never a phone." "Phones are for the platform, the train's for finishing things." "Finishing things." "It's the only place I finish a book." She turned the thermos a quarter turn in her lap. "At home I start 6. I've got them all over the apartment, splayed open, face down, breaking their own spines. I'm a serial abandoner. But on the train there's nothing else to do but the one I brought. No dishes, no laundry sitting there being guilty, so I finish them here." "You also wreck them." She turned her head toward me in the dark. "I'm sorry?" "The pages. You fold the corners. I don't know where the nerve came from. The dark, probably. You can say things into the dark you can't say into the light. You dog-ear them. I've watched you do it for a month and it kills me a little every time." "Oh, here we go. It's a book. It's done nothing to you. It's mine. I'll fold it if I want." That's the violence of it, the casualness. You just bend it to your will and move on like it's nothing. You're one of those. She actually shifted toward me. You use a bookmark. You probably have a special one. You probably have a drawer of them. I did. I had a drawer of them. That's not a crime. It's worse than a crime. It's a personality. She was warming to it now, the words coming faster. A dog ear is a map. It's a record of where I was when something landed. You take that out of a book and put it in a drawer separate, like the book's too precious to carry a memory of being read. You're not protecting the book. You're protecting yourself from leaving a mark on anything. I didn't have an answer to that. She'd handed me my own self across an inch of dark, and I sat there holding it. I was, for the record, appalled. I was also charmed past anything I could have hidden if there'd been enough light to read my face by, which there wasn't, which I was grateful for. "What's your name?" I said. Not a question the way I said it, just out. "Nora." She said it like she was handing me the cap to a thermos. "Yours?" "Marcus." "Marcus." She tried it once and put it down. "You go all the way to the end, Marcus, past me. I've seen you still on it when I get off." 2 stops past you, yeah." She didn't ask why. I noticed that. I noticed I wanted to ask her the same thing, why she was on the very last one specifically, the 11:40, when there were 3 earlier trains that would put her home before midnight. And I noticed the question forming, and I noticed myself not asking it, the way you leave a door closed because you're not sure you want to know what room it opens onto. That's when I saw the ring. She'd lifted the thermos to check the cap, and the dim strip caught it, a thin gold band on her right hand, plain worn smooth. I clocked it the way I clock everything, fast and quiet and without meaning to, right hand. Some women wear it on the right, I told myself. Some women just like a ring. But the rest of me had already done the arithmetic that men do in a half second and pretend takes no time at all, and filed her, gently undertaken, and felt my own posture change in the dark. Felt myself settle back an inch into friendly, into safe, into a register where nothing I said could be mistaken for asking. A relief almost, a rule I could ride behind. I didn't know it was her grandmother's. I didn't know she wore it on the right on purpose, for a reason that had nothing to do with anyone living. I'd built a whole wall off the back of a band of gold, and I leaned on it. We talked through the rest of the delay. Books mostly. She told me which covers lied. I told her about the 80-year-old regular at the restaurant who orders the same thing every Tuesday and sends it back every Tuesday and tips like a king both times. She asked if I lived alone, and I said yeah, now, and there was a small pause, and into it I dropped a name I hadn't planned to. Used to live with someone, Claire. Neutral. A fact like the weather. It's a two-bedroom that doesn't need two bedrooms anymore. I heard her take that in. I didn't hear what she did with it. I found out later she'd heard a present tense in it that I never put there. She heard a woman still in the rooms, heard me carefully not talking about her, and she nodded in the dark and filed me gently, the same way I'd filed her, behind a wall of her own. Two people leaning back from each other in a dim car, each behind a thing that wasn't true, both of us relieved to have a reason not to lean in. The lights came up before either of us caught it. The bright one snapped back, the wheels started thinking again, the voice apologized once more and thanked us for our patience, and the harsh light landed on both of us at once, and we sat there blinking like we'd been caught at something. She put her book back in her bag. She hadn't read a page of it. Neither had I. She got off at her stop, stood, gathered the thermos in the bag, and at the door she half-turned and said, "Burm up, guy," not unkindly, almost fond, and stepped off, and the doors closed, and I rode the last 2 stops alone with my heart going like I'd run them. Walter found me on the platform a few nights after that. He'd come through during the delay, I learned. I hadn't seen him in the dark, but he'd seen us. The two of us pulled toward the same 6 inches of floor over a spilled thermos, and when he punched my ticket that next week he held my eye a beat too long over the silver clipper and smiled. Didn't say anything, just smiled, slow, under the yellowed corner of his mustache in a way that made me feel about 19 and entirely transparent. Cot chunk. He moved on. I sat there feeling seen straight through, which I hated, and which I think was the point. It was on a different night, a quiet one, the car nearly empty, that he stopped at my seat and didn't move on. "Last shift's coming," he said. He was looking at the clipper in his hand, turning it over. "End of the month. They're putting me out to pasture finally. 31 years. He clipped my ticket without looking down at it, the way you tie your own shoes blind. "Met my wife on this line, you know." I didn't know. I said so. Got on going the wrong direction, a small smile. "Rush hour, 100 years ago. I'm so tired off a double I get on the inbound instead of the outbound, and I don't notice for 4 stops. And there she is, across the aisle, watching me figure out I'm a fool." He looked up the empty car like she might still be in it. "Rode this line 30 more years with that woman. And you want to know the truth of it? I really looked at her, the way you're supposed to look at a person, exactly once. The last day she was alive. In a hospital chair, not even a train. Ka-chunk, though there was no ticket left to clip. 30 years across the aisle, and I looked out the window the whole time." He moved on down the car. I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say to it. After that the ritual thickened, the way ice does, a little every cold night. We traded books now. She'd finish one and hand it to me without a word, just hold it out across the armrest, spine soft, corners folded, and I'd take it and read it that week so I'd have something to bring her. I read on my breaks at work, in the cramped back office between the dinner rush and the close, hunched under the bad light, specifically and only so I could talk to her about it on the 1140. One of them had a line in it that stopped me cold, a line about a man who measures his whole life in the spaces between other people, and I read it 4 times in that office, and then I did something I'd been raised to consider a sin. I took a pencil and I underlined it. Soft, light, the way you'd touch a bruise. I meant to show her. I had it ready, the page the corner I'd folded, her own crime against me now, to make her laugh. And on the train that night I had it open to the page and my thumb on the line, and I couldn't. I closed the book. Couldn't tell you why. The line said too much about me, and I wasn't ready for her to read it in my hand. There was a night so cold the doors iced at the seals. She got on shaking, hands jammed in her sleeves, and reached for the thermos and couldn't get the cap to turn. Her fingers were too cold to grip it. She tried twice, and then, without a word, she held the thermos out to me. I took it. I worked the cap loose 2 seconds, no more, and handed it back. And in the handing back, her cold fingers and my cold fingers both wrapped around the warm metal of it at the same time, the heat coming up through the steel into both our hands at once, and we held it there a beat longer than the handoff needed. And neither of us said one word, and that was the most that had ever passed between us. 2 seconds, a warm thermos between 2 cold hands. It said more than anything I'd built and demolished in my head for a month. She poured the lid full and drank it, and then, looking straight ahead at the black window, not at me, she said the thing. "You know why I'm on this one?" It wasn't a question, the last one. "No," I said. "Quiet, I don't. The apartment's loudest when it's empties. People think quiet is the silence. It's not. The silence has a sound when there's nobody in it. It hums. The fridge, the pipes, the guy upstairs, you can hear all of it, and none of it is for you." She breathed out. "On here I'm alone too. But it's a different alone. There's people even when there's not. There's the chime. There's a stranger 4 rows back who doesn't need anything from me." A pause. I take the last one because it's the only place being alone doesn't feel like being left. She looked at me then, full on. The first time I think that she'd really turned and looked at me in the light. And I understood, sitting there, that I took it for the exact same reason. The exact same one. That I'd engineered an entire sealed life around the one thing she'd just said out loud, and that I had never once said it to a living person, not to Claire, not to anyone, that I'd have sooner walked into traffic than say it. And here was a stranger, with a dented thermos, saying it for me in the cold. I didn't answer her in words. I didn't have the words, and the ones I had felt too small to take out. I just didn't move 4 rows back the next night, or any night after. But the thing about getting close to someone in the dark is that it's built out of the dark. We had 2 facts wrong between us, sitting there unexploded, a ring I'd read one way, and a name I'd said the other. And neither of us knew yet that the world was about to do what the world does to anything built somewhere it isn't supposed to last. It was already coming. I just hadn't read the notice yet. We sit together now. That's the part I still can't get over. The 4 rows back seat is gone. I gave it up for good and never told it goodbye. Now I board and walk straight up the car like a man with somewhere to be, and the somewhere is a window seat with a woman already in it. The diagonal, the careful distance, the patched gray tape I used to put my hand on like a railing. All of it behind me. It's just a seat where a lonelier man used to sit. And we talked the whole ride. The small talk burned off somewhere in the cold weeks the way fog does when the sun finally commits to it. No more cold tonight. No more bookmark guy. We talk like people who've decided the other one is worth the breath. About her students because it turned out she taught 9th grade English, a fact she let slip the same casual way she'd let her name slip. Who sends back his Tuesday steak. About whether a book you hated as a kid deserves a second trial as an adult. I knew her hands by then. I could have drawn them the way she held the thermos with both. The small, smooth band on the right one, catching the light when she turned the cap. That ring is where it started to come apart. The thing I'd built a wall out of. It was a Wednesday, crowded for the 11:40, which meant maybe 9 people instead of 3. A woman got on at the second stop with shopping bags and took the seat across from us, the kind of person who talks to strangers because the silence offends her. Nora was telling me about a kid who'd written an essay defending the villain in a book they were reading, and the woman across from us nodded along like she'd been invited, and then she leaned in, during a pause, and put her hand near Nora's knee. "How long have you 2 been married?" I started to say something. I don't know what, some correction, gentle, the kind you make for a stranger. But Nora got there first. "We're not." The woman's eyes went to the ring. "Right hand, but some people don't track which hand." "Oh, engaged then. Congratulations. It's a lovely little band." "It's my grandmother's." Nora said it flat, and not cold, just final the way you close the drawer. "I wear it on the right on purpose, so nobody asks me that." The woman laughed, a little stung, and looked out the window, and that was the end of her. But I'd stopped hearing the train. I'd spent a month and change leaning on a fact, and the fact was a stranger's mistake I'd made for myself in a half-dark car. Taken. I'd filed her under taken the first night I saw that gold catch the light and built my whole posture off it. The friendly register, the safe distance, the rule I got to ride behind so I'd never have to risk asking for anything. I'd been managing my own feelings down for weeks. Every night I'd felt the wall and leaned on it and called it peace. And the wall was nothing. It had never been anything. A grandmother, and a right hand, and a girl who'd gotten tired of the floor of the whole careful thing tilted under me. I sat there with the train moving again and felt every brick I'd laid come loose at once. Quiet, no sound to it, the way the worst collapses go. "You okay?" Nora said. She'd caught something in my face. She always caught things. "Fine," I said. Long shift. A work shoe excuse, a 2-year reflex. I gave her the small flat lie and she let me have it, the way she let me have things. And I sat there recalculating everything I thought I'd known while the chime sounded, the lower note first every single time. I didn't fix it that night. You don't fix a month of wrong arithmetic in one stop. But something had moved, and I think she felt it move too, because a few nights later she did her own version of the same thing. We were past her stop in the conversation, deep in it, the train half empty. And she turned the thermos a quarter turn, which I'd learned by then was the thing she did before she said something she'd been carrying. "The person you used to live with," she said. "Light, too light. Do you still see her around? The neighborhood, I mean." I heard it then. The present tense she'd been carrying all this time. Used to live with. But in her voice there was a woman still living somewhere in my rooms. A thing I was carefully not talking about. A present I'd never corrected because I never knew she'd heard one. "Claire," I said. "No, she's been gone 2 years." Nora's hands went still on the thermos. 2 years, I said again, because I watched it land and I wanted it to land all the way. She moved across the country. We don't talk. It wasn't a fire, it was a slow leak, and by the time it was over there was nothing left to say, so we didn't say it. I looked at the black window. I keep a 2-bedroom that doesn't need 2 bedrooms. That's the whole haunting. An extra room and a lease I'm too tired to break. I watched her recalculate, the exact way I had. A present tense dying in her, the arithmetic she'd been running for weeks getting redone. And I knew what it was because I'd just done it myself in front of a woman with shopping bags. Her shoulders came down half an inch. Something behind her eyes that had been standing guard sat down. 2 people, a whole winter of polite distance, and underneath it 2 facts that were never true. A grandmother's ring I read as a marriage. A dead relationship she heard as a living one. We'd each built a wall off a thing that didn't exist and leaned on it and been so relieved to have it, because the wall meant we never had to find out what we'd do without one. We sat with that for a long stretch of dark track, and I felt the inch of air on the armrest get warmer. I felt the guards come off the border. And then the world taped a piece of paper to the door. I saw it the next night getting on. White sheet, official, laminated against the weather, zip-tied to the rail by the doors at chest height where you couldn't miss it. I almost walked past. Then a word caught me. Discontinued. I stood there in the doorway with my coat half off and read it twice. The 11:40 was being cut, end of the month. Low ridership, a consolidation of the overnight schedule, thanking us for years of patronage in the bloodless font that governments use to tell you something is ending. The last late train would run on the 30th. After that, the platform I'd timed my whole life to would go dark at a decent hour like everywhere else. I read it a 3rd time while the chime warned me, and stepped on just before it shut. I'd like to tell you the first thing I felt was about her. It wasn't. The first thing I felt was the loss of the room, the sanctuary. The 1 hour a day where being tired didn't cost me anything, where I could let my whole face down and not one soul would need a thing from me. Gone in 3 weeks. The sealed loop I'd built and been so proud of, somebody upstairs had just stamped a date on the back of it. And then, half a second behind that, came the second thing, and it took the floor out worse than the ring had. Her, the hour with her. The only place I had her was the thing being deleted. I sat down in the window seat she'd left open and did the math. Nobody wants to do. I knew her first name. Nora. That was the whole of it, not her last name, not her street, her building, her number, the spelling of anything. We had never traded a digit, never needed to, because every night at 11:40, the train just handed her to me, a delivery I'd done nothing to earn and made no plan to keep. I'd built an entire relationship inside a thing with an expiration date, and never once thought about the date, because the train had always just been there. It was never going to be, will they talk? We talked. We'd cracked that one open weeks ago. The question had quietly become a worse one while I wasn't looking. Will they exist anywhere that isn't this train? 3 weeks. After that, the car goes back to being a car that doesn't run, and the platform goes dark, and the woman with the dented thermos goes wherever she goes when she's not being handed to me by a schedule, and I have a first name and a memory of how she holds a book. I didn't tell her I'd seen it. She didn't say anything either. I'm fairly sure she'd read it too, standing in that same door, but neither of us brought it onto the train with us. We talked about a book. We pretended the paper wasn't there. You can do that with another person. Agree without a word to leave the worst thing on the platform. We'd been leaving worse things on platforms all winter. Walter brought it onto the train in the end. Walter, who didn't leave things on platforms. His last shift had a date now too. Word had gone around, and a few nights after the notice went up, I heard one of the other late crew say it, and the date was the 30th, the same night. Of course it was the same night. 31 years on the line, and the line was sending him out on the very last run of the very last train it would ever make at that hour. The end of his and the end of the 11:40, stamped together, one piece of paper. He found me on the platform a few nights before it. I'd gotten off at my stop, my actual stop, and he'd stepped down onto the concrete for a smoke he wasn't supposed to have. And he tipped his head for me to come over, away from the doors, into the cold, quiet end of the platform where the light didn't reach. You heard, he said. I heard. Both of you, same night. Fitting. He turned the silver clipper over in his fingers, even out here, even with no ticket in 100 yards. 31 years. You'd think a man would have something wise saved up for the end of a thing like that. He breathed smoke into the cold. I don't. I've just got the one regret, and it's not the kind they put on a cake. I waited. The board overhead clicked its letters around to nothing. All those years, Walter said, I spent looking out the window. The whole ride, every ride, my whole life, watching the dark go by. He looked at me then, straight on, the way he almost never did. The thing worth looking at was across the aisle. It was always across the aisle, and I figured I had time to turn my head, and then one day I didn't. He let that sit. Then he did the thing I didn't expect, the thing that put it square in my chest. "She gets off 3 stops before you," he said. I looked at him. "The one with the green thermos, up the car. 3 stops before your stop. Every night I clip her, I watch her go." A small pause, the smoke curling. "She used to get off at yours, son. Same stop as you. For months, I had the 2 of you stepping off the same platform every night and never once at the same door." He dropped the cigarette, put his shoe on it. "Then back in the fall, she started getting off early, 3 stops short. Started walking, I figure, the rest of the way. And I've been a conductor a long time, and there's only one reason a person who could ride all the way starts getting off early and walking." He looked at me. "Figure out why." Then he climbed back up into the car, and the doors shut, and the 1140 pulled north without me on it, and I stood on the cold platform doing the only arithmetic that had ever mattered to me. She used to get off at my stop. Same one. We'd been stepping off the same concrete every night, 2 doors apart, 2 strangers, for months before I ever dropped a glove. And then in the fall, she'd started getting off 3 stops early, walking the rest in the cold, the long way home. I counted back. I'm good with weeks, with shifts, with how the calendar folds. I counted back to when the thing in my chest had started, the night the loop got its first leak, and the math came up the same place his had. The glove. It started the night of the glove. The night she'd ridden 3 stops the wrong way to hand me a $4 glove on a platform that wasn't hers, warm from being held the whole way. I'd spent that whole night not knowing whether she'd gone out of her way or just happened to be getting off there. Walter had just answered it for me, with a dead cigarette under his shoe. She'd been getting off 3 stops early ever since, just to have 15 more minutes of a car going nowhere with a tired man 4 rows back who didn't know yet that he was the reason she was walking home in the dark. I had to put my hand on the cold rail of the stair to stand there with that. And holding the rail, the real shape of the thing finally showed itself, and it was worse than a canceled train. Everything between us had happened inside a structure. I'd never seen it because I'd built it that way on purpose. The train, the hour, the dark, the unspoken rules of a quiet car at midnight, where you sit beside someone and trade books and never have to say a single thing about what it is because the train says it for you. The structure made a real choice unnecessary. I never had to ask her for anything, because the 1140 handed her to me without my asking. We'd built the whole thing inside a frame that meant neither of us ever had to step into the open and say the words and be seen wanting. That's the life I'd engineered, the whole of it. A man good at being needed and bad at being known, who'd sealed himself into a loop precisely so no one would ever see him tired, exposed, reaching for something he might not get. I'd made being unseen into a fortress and called it peace. And the 30th was going to tear the structure down to the studs. No train, no hour, no dark to talk into. After that night, if either of us wanted the other to exist past the 1140, somebody was going to have to actually choose. Out loud, in daylight, where you can't hide that you're tired and reaching and might be wrong. The exact thing I'd spent 2 years in a sealed loop and a 4 rows back seat, making sure I'd never have to do. The second to last night, neither of us said any of it. We sat in the window seat, with the notice zip-tied to the door 8 feet away, and talked about a book she'd handed me. The soft-spined one, with the line in it I still hadn't shown her. We laughed about something a student of hers had done. We left the worst thing on the platform one more time, both of us knowing it was waiting there, and both of us choosing the warm car and the small talk that wasn't small anymore. But I noticed her thermos was empty. She'd poured the last of it before the second stop, drunk it, screwed the cap back on. And she held it the whole rest of the ride anyway. Both hands around an empty thermos all the way to her stop, like it was something to hold. Like if she held it tight enough she wouldn't have to hold the other thing. She got off 3 stops early, the way I now knew she'd been doing since the glove. And I watched her go and didn't say a word, and the doors shut, and I rode the rest of the way alone with the empty seat warm beside me. Tomorrow was the 30th, Walter's last shift, the last run of the last train. After tomorrow there'd be no car, no hour, no dark to hide a confession in. Just 2 people who'd never said one true thing in the light, and a clock 40 seconds fast, counting down the last of the only world we'd ever had. The 30th came the way the worst days come, like any other day. I worked the close. I wiped down the line, killed the back house lights, signed last ticket, and walked to the platform with my coat already on. And the board overhead said 11:40, and the clock under it said 40 seconds more than that, the way it always had. 40 seconds fast, the last night. it would ever be wrong about anything. Walter was on the platform when I got there, out early in his pressed coat, the silver clipper already in his hand, though there was no one to clip. He saw me and didn't smile his slow smile. He just nodded once, like a man nodding at the start of something instead of the end. The doors hissed open. She was already there. Third car from the back, window seat, the dented thermos in her lap and a paperback I didn't recognize against her knee. She looked up when I came through the door, held it a beat, went back to the page. I sat down beside her, where I sat, and the train pulled out, north into the dark, for the last time, and I felt every stop coming the way you feel, the last few stairs in the dark with your hand out. We didn't talk about the notice. 8 feet away it hung zip-tied to the door, laminated official, and we both knew it was there, and neither of us looked at it. We talked about her book for a while, a small one. She told me which covers lied. I half listened, because the whole time another clock was running under the conversation, the one that wasn't 40 seconds fast, the one that was exactly right and had 3 stops left in it. Because after tonight, there was no train. I'd been turning it over for 2 weeks, and it always came out the same. No 11:40 meant no hour. No hour meant no dark to talk into, no quiet car to hand her to me, no structure to stand behind. If she was going to exist past tonight, past the last set of doors at the end of the line, then somebody had to do the thing the train had let us never do. Step into the daylight. Where you can't dim the lights. Where you can't hide that you're tired, that you slept 4 hours, that your whole face has been holding something up all day and it shows. Daylight. The one room I'd spent 2 years building a life to avoid. Her stop was coming, the one 3 stops early, the one I now knew she'd been getting off at since the glove, just to ride longer. And I understood that if I let her get off at it tonight, that was it. The doors would close, and the train would never run again. And I'd have a first name and a memory of how she held a book, and that would be the whole of it forever. So I said it, before the demolition crew in my head could get to it. I have to tell you something. My voice came out wrong, smaller than I meant, about the train. She turned the thermos a quarter turn in her lap. I knew that one by now. I moved my shifts. It just came, at work, weeks ago. I traded with one of my line cooks, took the worst schedule, the late close, every night, so I'd make the 11:40 instead of the 10. I made myself keep going because if I stopped, I'd never start again. I didn't have to. I had an earlier one I could have caught. I gave it up on purpose. Marcus. And the worst part. I looked at the black window so I wouldn't have to look at her. I knew it was getting canceled. I'd heard. Months back, before the notice, one of the crew said the late one was on the chopping block, and I rearranged my whole week around it anyway. My hands were doing something in my lap I couldn't stop. I moved my whole life around a train I knew was getting canceled. For about 3 weeks now, I've been doing that for you. There it was, out, in the open in the half-dark, the one thing. I'd spent 2 years building a sealed loop so no one would ever see me reaching, and I just told her I broke it on purpose for her, and that I'd been reaching the whole time and hiding the hand. The mask didn't come off so much as fall. I heard the train under us and my own pulse over it, and I waited for her to be kind about it, which is the worst thing, the gentle letdown, the work shoe excuse handed back. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she reached into her bag. Not for the thermos, for the book. The paperback against her knee, the one I hadn't recognized, and now in the dim strip I saw why I hadn't. It was mine, the soft-spined one I'd handed her weeks back, the one with the line in it. She opened it, not to the front, straight to the page she already knew, the way she went straight to her seat every night, and she turned the book toward me and held it under the emergency light so I could see. The line. The one about a man who measures his whole life in the spaces between other people. The line that had stopped me cold in that cramped back office under the bad bulb, that I'd underlined in soft pencil and then been too much of a coward to show her, because it said too much about me and I wasn't ready for her to read it in my own hand. It was underlined. Mine first, my soft pencil light, the way you touch a bruise. And under it, a second line, ink blue, pressed harder, a different night, a different hand. She'd underlined it too. The same line. Twice. 2 of us, 2 different nights, neither one telling the other, both of us stopping at the same 11 words in a borrowed paperback and pressing them down so we wouldn't lose them. I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything. She closed the book and held it in her lap with both hands the way she held the thermos, and she looked straight ahead at the dark, and that was her answer, the whole of it. She'd answered me. Weeks before I'd asked, in ink, on a page she knew I'd have to open eventually. The second stop went by, 2 left. I had to ask her the real thing now, and I knew it couldn't be a sweep of music, Couldn't be a knee on the floor of a train car. Couldn't be anything I'd have to be brave about in a way that hid how scared I was. It had to be the small, ugly, true version, so I gave her that. Would you want to get a coffee? My voice cracked on it and I let it. In the day, the actual day with the sun up, I made myself look at her, where I'll look exactly as tired as I am, where you'll see all of it, the whole thing, no dark to fix it. I'm not good in the light, I never have been. I ran out of the rehearsed part and the unrehearsed part came, but I'd rather you saw me tired than not at all. I braced. 2 years of bracing, all of it loaded into one breath. She turned and looked at me. Full on, the way she'd done that cold night. And she said it the way she said everything. No performance, no music, like she was telling me her name again. Yes. Then she did the thing I'll keep. The train schedule was in my coat pocket, a folded paper one I'd been carrying since the notice, soft now from my hand. She reached over, slid it half out, and took the bottom corner of it between her finger and thumb, and folded it down. Dog-eared it. A crease in the corner of a schedule for a train that would never run again, the small private violence I'd watched her commit on 100 pages and pretended to be appalled by. Marking the page. Like there was more to come. I didn't say a word about it. I'd stopped somewhere back in the cold, having any feeling about it but the one. The last stop came up out of the dark, the end of the line. And Walter's voice came over the speaker. He had a microphone up in the cab, an old one with a switch he had to hold, and you could hear him hold it, the breath before, the small click. The automated voice did the stops. Walter never used it. He did his by hand every night, 31 years of it, and this was the last one. Last stop, he said, scratchy, far away and right beside us at the same time, end of the line. A pause, the hold switch hissing. 31 years I've called these stops. His voice didn't shake, it just went slow. Wanted to say thank you, to the ones who rode this late. You were good company, even the ones I never met. Another pause longer. Get home safe tonight. Look after each other. I thought that was it. The train slowed, the platform lights came up gold in the windows, the brake started to sing. Then the switch clicked once more. And do me one favor, Walter said. Whatever it is across the aisle from you, look up at it while you still can. The trick was never the train. The doors started their warning chime. The low note first. It was never the train, folks. It was always just looking up. Click. The microphone went dead. The automated voice came on and named the station like nothing had happened. We stood. She gathered the thermos and the bag and the book, all three against her, and we stepped off together, the same door, the same concrete, for the first and last time. Up the platform, the cab window was lit and Walter was in it, and as we passed he looked down at me through the glass, and he gave me one nod, just one. Then he looked back at his board, an old man at the end of a line he'd ridden his whole life, and the empty train sat there at that platform with all its lights on and nowhere left to go. I won't tell you about the coffee. It happened. I'll leave it where it is. Some things you don't pull up into the light and turn over for people. But I'll tell you about the morning after, because that's the part that changed me, and it didn't change me with music either. It was a cheap diner. Vinyl booths, a coffee pot that had been on the burner since the war, light coming through the window so bright and so flat it hurt. The kind of light that doesn't forgive anything. We sat across from each other in it, both of us at 9 in the morning, and there was nowhere to hide and nothing dimmed and no chime to wait for. And she looked tired. She looked like a woman who hadn't slept enough because she hadn't. There were lines by her eyes the dark had never shown me. Her hair wasn't doing what she wanted it to. The thermos sat on the table between us, and in that brutal flat morning light the dent in its side just looked like a dent. Not a detail I'd memorized in the half-dark, just a dent in a battered green thermos on a chipped diner table. The ring on her right hand caught the window light, and it just looked like a ring. A thin worn band that had been a grandmother's. Not a wall, not a verdict, not a thing I'd built a whole winter behind. Just a ring on the hand of a tired woman drinking bad coffee. And I wasn't hiding either, that was the thing. I'd come straight off a short night, myself, my face doing whatever my face does at 9 in the morning. When no one's supposed to see it, the exact face I'd built a sealed loop and a 4-rows back seat and 2 years of last trains to make sure no living person ever saw. She saw it, all of it, in the worst light there is. And she didn't flinch. She looked at me across the bad coffee, and she didn't flinch, and I didn't flinch back, and the dent stayed a dent, and the ring stayed a ring, and the morning stayed merciless and bright, and it was fine. Better than fine. I don't have a bigger word, and I don't want one. I still take a train sometimes, earlier now in the light with her. It's a different animal in the day. It's loud. It's crowded, full of people on their phones and kids and somebody's coffee about to go over, and you can see every face and every face can see yours, And there's no quiet car, no dim brown half-dark, no hour that belongs to no one. It's worse, by every measure I used to keep. I time none of it. I couldn't tell you the schedule. I get on the one we get on. And I wouldn't trade a minute of it for the 11:40. She still dog-ears the pages. She does it right in front of me now, looks at me while she does it, presses the corner down like a small dare, and I've stopped pretending it bothers me. The book we trade has 2 underlines in it on one page, hers and mine, and we never talk about it, and we never have to. There's a clock at the station we use. It keeps good time, it always has. And it took me a while to notice that I'd stopped checking it, that I no longer needed to know whether I had 40 seconds more or 40 less, no longer needed to time my whole life down to the minute, to the close, to the last train, to the sealed, safe, lonely loop of it. I'd built all of that to keep from being seen. A man good at being needed and bad at being known, who'd decided being unseen was the same thing as being safe. It isn't. I know that now in the only way that counts, which is across a chipped table in a light that hides nothing. So let me ask you something before you go. What would you have done the night the last train stopped running, when the thing you'd been hiding inside got a date stamped on it? Would you have let the doors close on her and kept your first name and your memory and your safe dark loop? Or would you have said the true thing out loud, in the light, and let somebody see you tired? Have you ever built a whole quiet life just to keep from being seen that way? Just to never have to reach for something in front of anyone? I think more of us have than would say it. Tell me in the comments. I read them late, on a train in the light now. There are more stories like this one on the channel. Stay a while.